healthcare. It's why we have to ensure Medicare for all who want it, a quality public health insurance program that anybody can get into, but I trust you to decide whether you want it, because I know how many labor brothers and sisters have been depending on plans that they have earned and bargained for, and I'm not going to kick you off of it. I trust you to choose what's going to make the most sense, but we have to act to make sure that one way or the other, everybody has some kind of coverage, and there is no longer any such thing as an uninsured American.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, well. Your first question is going to be from Reva Jones Thompson, and she's from LVCVA. Sister Reva?
Thank you. Hi, Pete. How you doing? Thank you for taking the time.
Good, thanks for running.
Yes, we appreciate you. White supremacy and hate crimes are on the rise in our country and around the world. And Donald Trump has continued to pour gas on that fire. We want to hear more about your plans to dismantle anti-Black and structural racism in this country. What is your plan and how can we do it?
So let me say this, of all the enemies the United States has ever faced, if you think about our history, the one that came nearest to actually destroying America entirely is white supremacy. And we see it on the rise once again. This is being made worse by this president, but let's be honest, this president is taking advantage of it, but did not invent it. It has been with us the whole time. And it is structural. It is built into every aspect of American life, where Black Americans might as well be living in a different country when it comes to access to everything from justice to healthcare. It's why I've put forward the most comprehensive plan to dismantle systemic racism that any candidate has yet offered in presidential politics. We call it the Frederick Douglass Plan. I wanted it to be named after Frederick Douglass because he called this nation to actually live up to those ideals that we talk about. It should be as big as the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe, but this time we have to invest right here at home. And it starts with economic empowerment. That's everything from supporting Black entrepreneurs who are creating more economic opportunity for others, but having trouble getting credit and getting the support that they need in order to get those businesses up and running. That's why I want the federal government to do more business with those businesses owned by those who have been excluded in the past. And it's, of course, it's why it's so important to stand with labor, because we know when we raise wages and empower workers, that benefits the Black and brown Americans who have disproportionately borne the burden of all of these attacks on American workers. So it's economic empowerment, but not only that, it's health, attacking things like the maternal mortality gap and delivering equity to our healthcare. It's education, supporting our HBCUs and making sure that we have funding going into Title I schools directly to make sure that we have more diverse teaching staff and administrators that helps students of color succeed. It's housing, because we know that Black home ownership is actually at a lower level than it's been in the past. We've got to act on criminal justice reform and decarcerate a nation that is shockingly reliant on incarceration that has huge racial disparities in access to the justice system. And to make all of this happen, we also need to back it up with a 21st Century Voting Rights Act. So the kind of racially motivated voter suppression that is changing election outcomes around the country cannot stand. This is going to require everyone to have a stake in making this country actually live up to its creed. And so I view this not only as something that must be presented as an agenda for Black Americans, but also as something that every American needs to understand our obligation to do something about in order to protect this country. And last but certainly not least, we need to make it clear from the White House on down that hate has no home in the United States of America, and call it out whenever it rears its head.
Thank you, Mayor Pete. Thank you, Sister Reva. The next question is from Tom Sharp, Clark County.
Hello, Pete. My name is Tom Sharp, and I am a principal accountant with the Clark County Department of Aviation. Healthcare is one of our members' most important issues because we're the largest healthcare workers union in Nevada. As a local union, we're committed to making sure we run healthcare for all. Right now, despite all this talk about this state being a union state, we have the 6th highest rate of of uninsured people in the nation, with more than 11% of our people lacking health care. For those who have health insurance, premiums continue to escalate even as greedy healthcare companies' profits rise. So my question to you is this: what is your plan to make sure everyone has quality health care? Not just health insurance, but quality health care. Thank you.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. This is not just about the debate over insurance. As I shared earlier, my vision on that is Medicare for all who want it, create a public plan, let everybody have access to it, but also trust you to decide whether you want that or some other kind of plan. But that's just part of what we've got to deal with. There is so much more to health than what is being talked about in the political debate. We're not talking enough about prescription drugs, holding drug companies accountable, requiring that they negotiate with Medicare and with the public, and ensuring when this kind of price gouging goes up, that there will be penalties for that, because these companies are doing it not because they have to, but because they can. We got to deal with mental health and addiction from a culture where we can't be afraid to talk about issues like addiction, like mental health, be as comfortable discussing a serious mental illness as we would be a relative in a battle with cancer, so that we can bring it out of the shadows. But also specific policy moves so that we have more healthcare providers, and so that we make sure our teachers and our first responders have the mental health first aid training that they need, and then a system ready to respond when they identify issues. We've got to be looking more at racial inequity in health, not just the maternal mortality gap that is so shocking, that has black women 3 times as likely to die related to childbirth as white women, but racial disparities in everything from cancer mortality to exposure to HIV/AIDS. And that's why I'm proposing an Office of Health Equity and Justice built not only into the Health and Human Services Department, but every agency that can do work on this. We've got to face the fact that our entire healthcare system needs to change, and such an important part of this is what you're already doing every day, which is supporting the Americans who work in the field. How can we expect to deal with the shortage that we're going to have of healthcare, direct care workers for an aging population if we're not paying them? How can we expect to have providers continuing to go into nursing and other fields if that career track is not supported? We've got to make sure that we are standing with those who are delivering care because they know what's best for patients, they know what's best in their communities, and they deserve to have the message sent and to have the concrete protections in the workplace, not just wages, but protections that let them know just how important this field is, because we're going to be turning to more Americans than ever to be making this possible as we grow stronger in our ability to deal with mental health, and as each of us, each passing year, grows 1 year older.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pete. Your next and final question is from Kevin Hawthorne, Clark County.
Good afternoon, Mr. Buttigieg. My name is Kevin Hawthorne, and I'm a 14-year county worker at McCarran International Airport here in Las Vegas. As a proud union member, I want to know how you would make it possible for all working people to join together in a union. All workers need a seat at the table with big corporations. Our nation's labor laws are not sufficient for working people in today's economy. We need union rights for all people to win a higher pay. Ensure everyone has access to quality, affordable health care. Immigrants are safe, and we can all drink clean water and breathe clean air. What will you do to make it possible for all of us to live our best life?
We absolutely will. If you look across my lifetime, 2 things happen in our economy. One is that inequality went up and wages stagnated, and the other is that union participation went down. That's not a coincidence. The problems in our economy are not the result of some mysterious cosmic force out there. They're the result of decisions, and many of those problematic decisions I mentioned in my opening relate directly to an effort to undermine labor and union organizing. So here's what we can do about it. First of all, we can expand who can unionize. And I know, again, that SEIU is all over this, making sure that domestic workers, making sure that farm workers, and in my opinion, we got to make sure that gig workers are able to organize, because if you're doing work, that makes you a worker, and that means you deserve worker protections, good wages, and all of the benefits that a union can deliver. We also got to work on how you can unionize, making sure that there are actual penalties for employers that interfere with union elections, making sure that we allow things like multi-employer bargaining. That's a big part of what's going to help us get more fast food workers organized, for example. And we got to deal with these laws that directly target the ability of workers to seek better living conditions and wages. That means it's not enough, although we have to. It's not enough to raise the minimum wage, which we must do. We've also got to go after things like these right-to-work laws, so-called right-to-work laws, that undermine the ability of workers to seek better conditions and better pay. And I can tell you from Indiana, they're not going to